This podcast is a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to find out more. G'day guys, welcome back to Mike Talks, the Sometimes Friday edition of my podcast that I sometimes do when I sometimes have time. This week I do have time, and I am so excited about the guest this week. This was a really fun chat that I did with an old mate of mine, Joseph Green, a stand-up comedian here in Melbourne. Joseph was highly requested by listeners of this podcast, and he is just a genuinely great guy, like amazing vibes around Joseph. He's a really, really lovely dude and a really funny guy. I went to the opening night of his Melbourne International Comedy Festival show, What Are the Chances?, earlier this year, and it was just one of the most incredible shows I've ever seen. So much fun and this amazing twist, and we talk a lot about the production of that show in this chat. So I hope you enjoy it. If you want to support me, follow me on Instagram, radio.mike. I'm also on TikTok now, Radio Mike, and YouTube. This podcast, the full video version of this podcast, is up on my YouTube channel the same day this goes out. And you can go to patreon.com/Radio Mike if you just want to give $1 a month. That is $12 a year. Or 3 coffees a year if you would buy me a coffee 3 times a year in exchange for the content that I make. That would be a massive help to me. So $1 a month, the tip jar tier on Patreon. There's other tiers with a bunch of bonus content as well. If you are happy to support the shows, that would be awesome. It just helps me keep making content like this, and helps me keep making it better and paying producer Pat to work on this show and make a lot of the content that you see. So that would be amazing. Get in touch with me anytime on Instagram or radiomikepod@gmail.com. But for now, enjoy this chat with the amazing, talented Joseph Green. All right, welcome to Mike Talks, the bonus Friday edition of this podcast. And the man sitting next to me right now came up with what looked like an entire bottle of wine that he may have like been halfway through swigging, which really confused me. He has clarified it is a kombucha.
Kombucha on brand.
It is Joseph Green, stand-up comedian, and someone that has been requested highly for this show.
Really?
Because I think
that's amazing. Thank you.
And one thing that it's not necessarily to do with your stand-up, which is great, except a lot of people have this impression of you, which I will attest to, that you're just a really nice guy. So,
he's such a nice guy.
Well, I said, hey guys, I'm thinking of asking Joseph Green to be on Mike Talks. Would people want to hear from him? Like, yeah, he's such a nice guy.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you if that's you that's put in that request. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being on, man. How are you? How have you been?
Pretty good, man. It's 2-3 days since the comedy festival finished. And thank you for coming. You came on the first night.
I was opening night, front row as well.
Thank you. And I apologize. That was more of a trial show, I feel.
Well, it was really good, man.
I was still definitely putting things together at that point.
Yeah. But, and we will get into the show. I noticed you just took off your watch.
I did.
Little to no reasoning behind it. Is that... What was the reason?
I was like, I bet he's going to pull me up on the watch.
So to audio listeners, Joseph just took off his watch. Can you elaborate on that? Why? Is it because you don't want to know how much time you're wasting?
No, whenever I'm like, it's more of a performing thing, or whenever I've got I think maybe it's a microphone.
Okay.
Whenever I go on stage, before I took off the watch, I put my phone off to the side. Yeah. I don't like to have anything in my pockets.
Right, but the shoes will stay on? Like, do you want to take your shoes off? You can. You can.
The shoes will stay on.
Okay.
Yes.
So how'd you get, we were just talking off air, you sold out pretty much every night at the Comedy Fest, which is awesome.
Thank you, yeah.
How'd that feel? I assume good.
It was great, man. It was the first time that's happened before. I've done maybe 3 other solo shows there. Yeah. But also, I mean, it was probably my best show, but also I was at 9 o'clock, whereas previous years I've had 11:30, 10:30 and 9:45.
And is that just like allocated to you, or do you choose?
Yeah, it's partly allocated, but it's partly because they think, he'll be dumb enough to say yes.
Which I guess, to their credit, you were twice.
And I was every time.
So what, this time were they like, hey, we'll put you on 10:30, and you're like, no.
No, this time I just got offered 9 o'clock. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's better than 10:30.
Good time.
And I said yes.
Yeah, we did 2 shows that night, one after each other.
Lovely.
So we came over to your show after seeing another show,
Nice.
both of which were great. We had a really good
Great.
night.
Thank you.
So you were doing it at Storyville.
Yeah.
Is that where you've done it in the past?
No, the first time I'd never been to the venue before. I did a show there.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
I've been there once, but I can't remember who it was with, but it's like a storybook themed bar.
It's Alice in Wonderland, very
Yeah.
sort of surrealistic.
Yeah.
And
Dark forest kind of vibes. Yeah.
But it was very positive. I had a very positive experience there, and everyone was super great. And
Yeah.
I think they have so many people come through that bar that so my nights sold out, I think, at 50.
Yeah.
But if I had like 40 tickets sold beforehand, they would always sort of just get it over the line with people coming through.
So when we said off air just before, like a lot of your sales were through word of mouth and stuff,
Yeah.
which is pretty impressive. You sold out pretty much every night. Like,
Yeah.
how does that, like, do you have any insight as to how that works? Or
I think it was the finish of the show.
yeah,
The closing of the show.
cool. So you think people started talking about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did.
Cool.
I mean,
And-
and that was kind of the intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will get into that in more detail.
sure.
So basically, Joseph's show at the Comedy Fest this year, which he may do at a later date in
Yes.
some form, something towards the end happens that is I would say a plot twist of the show.
Yeah, so it's a spoiler if you haven't seen the show and want to see the show.
Yeah.
There will be spoilers.
Yeah, we will talk about it, not
Yeah.
just yet, but like talk about like the show is centered around you meeting a old Japanese woman in Sydney in
Yes.
front of a pink wall and
Yes.
taking a photo with her.
Yes.
Tell me about like that and how that all came to
So
be.
that was sort of just a very serendipitous encounter where I was in Marrickville in the inner west of Sydney
Yeah.
doing a photo shoot with the pink wall, as you said.
Was it a photo shoot just for you?
Yeah, just for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, cool.
And it turns out it became a lot better when we included an old Japanese woman. and she was walking past and she was wearing, as you can see in the photo, almost identical pink to the pink wall.
Right.
So I called out to her on the other side of the road. I said, "Madam," I said, "you look so beautiful wearing this outfit. Have you noticed that you're wearing the same pink? We're doing a photo shoot. Do you want to come?"
Yeah.
And she was so obliging and sweet, and she came across the road.
Yeah.
And we just took a series of photos, and the photographer showed me, Monica showed me the photos, and I said to Motoko, I said, "You know, Motoko, I might use this for the Melbourne International Comedy Festival."
And just for the record, like this was the first you had never met
Never
this
met her.
woman and you're just like,
No.
"Hey, I'm going to use your photo on the
And she said, "Sure." And she gave me her number, and I texted her, and I said, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." And then she said, "That's great, all the best." And yeah.
How old was she?
I don't know. How old do you think she is? You saw the photo?
I would say like 74.
Yeah, in her
that
70s.
ballpark,
Definitely in
yeah.
her 70s.
Yeah. And she's a Japanese native who's immigrated to Australia, I assume.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
And originally, I mean, it was just a stand-up show with no intention of having her as a sort of central figure of the show or even relevant to the show in any way. And it wasn't until I came up with or have a joke / story towards the end of it
Yeah.
about, which I might as well tell partly
Yeah, let's
here,
get into it, yeah.
which is that
As long as you're cool with yeah. People, this is kind of going to give away bits of the show, but like I still think there's so much value in seeing this show because it was amazing.
Yeah,
Just to
thank
preface
you.
it. No,
Thank
you're
you, Mike.
welcome.
So I was at a house party recently. I say not a house party, it's a small gathering of whatever the legal limit was at the time.
And it was the time where you could do that
Yes.
as well.
And so that would have been in February, and a friend of mine showed the picture of Motoko and myself to this guy I'd never met before, who was also just a white Caucasian dude in his 20s. And he said he loved the photo, and it really had an impact on him. And he took me aside one-on-one and said, "Hey man, this is such a beautiful image. Can I just ask you, do you think you were a Japanese woman in a previous life?"
Yeah.
And I said, "No, I don't think I was." And he said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm really confident." And he said, I think you were. I really feel like you were. I said,
Okay.
what makes you so confident? And he said, because I was. And
can I just ask, are you the kind of person that like is into like spirituality and past lives?
I look like
reincarnation?
I could be.
Yeah.
Which is enough for people just to come up and just tell me everything that they think and feel about that.
Because if you don't know what Joseph looks like and you're just listening to the audio, Joseph kind of looks a bit like Jesus. Like you kind of look like what Jesus would be cast as in like a modern day
a white Jesus,
movie.
probably not the actual Jesus.
Yeah, you'd be a white Jesus.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it would be like people would see you and be like, oh, this guy's totally into reincarnation.
Absolutely.
And,
So that guy definitely felt that and took the liberty of assuming that, and told me that he was a Japanese woman himself, and that he sort of had a very good instinct for feeling when other people were, and he definitely felt that way about me.
And don't you reckon with like the plethora of things you could have been in a past
Yes.
life, like
Of all the things.
2 Japanese women in one room.
Exactly.
Like you could have been a cat, you could have been a tree, and
that's really where that joke goes, which is that I'm like, so there we were, just 2 Japanese women at this house party in Fitzroy, hanging out, catching up. And it sort of jokes about that until the end of the joke is it was the Saturday night, the Australian Open women's tennis final was taking place. And a friend of ours came outside and said, guys, you missed it. Naomi Osaka just won the Australian Open. And my new friend said, Naomi Osaka. And he just smiled. And he said, that's our girl.
It's a bit of divine intervention there. If you ever needed a sign, that was it.
Our great-great-great-granddaughter. And so that's...
He did not say that, though. Did he say that?
He did.
Oh, my God.
And I mean, and that's what I say on stage. And so I started telling that story, for about a month. And it was working well. And I thought, how can I extend this joke?
Gotcha.
Because, you have a joke, goes for a few minutes, and you think, is there any more? It's like when you're making orange juice, you get a bit of juice out of it. You're like, is there anything else in it?
Yeah, you're squeezing it.
Yeah, and then I thought the only thing that could be funnier from here was if I get 2 Japanese women. And so then what happens in the show, also earlier within that story, I say that he brews his own kombucha.
Yes, yes.
And his name is Dino. And
this is the guy that said this to you.
So there is an actual kombucha brewer in Melbourne called Dino. Quick shout, the good brew who sponsored the show.
Unsponsored.
But they sponsored my show.
Did they actually
They did, no, they sponsored the show. That's why I got all this kombucha. I got a drink.
How did you get in touch with them?
Well, I met him at a music festival.
so wait, but Dino is the guy that said I was a Japanese.
He didn't say that.
Right.
But I just sort of merged these people together.
Gotcha.
It's something he could say. And in fact, one night during the show, there was he's sitting in the audience, 2 people who were like, we know Dino. He would absolutely say that. That's totally something Dino would say. And then in the show, as you know, I say Dino's here tonight. And on that particular night, they're like, no, he's not here. And then I have a woman, a Yuko, who stands up and says, it's me, Dino.
Yes.
And she stands up as Dino, but she's a Japanese woman. And then she comes to the stage. I think a few things might have changed from that first show.
Yeah, because the first show, and I guess, it was the first time you all did this.
Yes.
Like, I was really confused because I thought that there was a woman in the audience. And I guess this is the point. I thought there's a woman in the audience who happens to be a Japanese woman. And she's like, oh, I'm going to stand up and say something. And then I thought it was weird because she started walking towards you. Didn't realize it was actually all part of the show.
Yeah, so that's obviously that was the intention.
Yeah.
But also I found that I think on that first night, I was probably resisting her a lot. And I wanted her to be sort of disrupt the show like that.
Yeah.
But be like, no, you're not Dino. And she's like, no, it's me, Dino.
Yeah.
And then,
I think a lot of us thought, because she was holding the kombucha, a lot of us thought she was drunk and gonna bottle you or something. That's what I was like, oh my God, is Joe about to get bottled on stage by this woman? Because you acted so well. Like, to me, it looked like you were like really confronted and like, oh my God, what's she gonna do? So I'm like, I was about to I was at the front. I was gonna like step in and be like, oh my God, if something happens here, I've got Joe's back. I'm gonna be on stage like cleaning up the blood and shit.
Thanks,
I was genuinely scared.
I appreciate that. You were like,
you need to warn
you were ready
people.
to step in. That would have been so funny if someone just took her out. I'm like, dude, no.
I was just
poor Ayuko.
I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do something. I'm friends with Joseph. Like, I can't just sit here.
I love that I've got such good people that are ready to intervene.
Yeah.
But so because of that, I feel like people were like, what's going on, which is what I want a bit of.
Yeah.
But also what the alteration that we made is that by the time she gets close to me, I'm like, it is you, Dino. I can see that. It's Dino. And so then people laugh at that point. And then it also has the effect of sort of extending the parameters of what is the realism of the show or the hyper-realism.
Yeah, yeah.
And it invites the audience to be in a new landscape of like, okay, these are the parameters now of what we're dealing with. And yeah.
And then do you want to talk about what happens after that?
So when
Spoilers.
Ayuko comes on stage, she says, you know, I'm a Japanese woman. I can see that you're a Japanese woman, but I'm not. But you clearly are. And she says, no, you are. Drink this kombucha and put on your kimono, and then you'll feel and become the Japanese woman that I know you are. And I say, that's ridiculous, Dino. I'll drink the kombucha. But, you know, I don't have a kimono. Why would I bring a kimono? I can check, but I'm telling you, I don't. And I walk off stage. And off stage, I say, listen, no kimono here. And then another Japanese woman walks on stage, Mayumi, who's dressed exactly as I am.
And is it the same outfit every night?
You know what? We had exactly the same pants, the same shirt, identical, same socks.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Every night, same outfit. And except one, we had a shirt, but we also wore the same shirt. And yes, she comes on, does a little bit of stand-up as me. And dude, she said so many funny things during, like there was one time where a guy was interrupting the show. And I had a little bit of back and forth with him and eventually told him to shut up. And then he did shut up for, you know, the next 30 or 40 minutes until Mayumi came on stage. And then he started talking again. And then Mayumi, who was, you know, such a soft, gentle woman and Japanese, obviously, says, hey, listen, you either shut the fuck up or I'll fuck you up.
I can't picture her saying that just from the brief interaction I had with her.
Which was just so good. When she like cut loose like that, it was just so magical.
And so I guess like it must be an expensive production to have two other, because most stand-ups don't have to pay two other people to do stuff every night.
So obviously I paid them every night to be there.
Yeah.
And beforehand I sort of reconciled it, like if it doesn't work out, if it's not funny and the show doesn't go well, then it will be still a funny story that I spent like almost a few $1,000s on just these Japanese women.
For the next show.
Yeah. But as it turns out, it worked out really well.
So good, man. And just like such a surprise.
And then the actual finish would have been slightly different to what you saw.
Yeah.
So I leave the stage, obviously. She did less stand-up because she did like long bits, I think, when you saw her. And so we cut that out as well, made it a bit tighter.
Sure.
And then at the end, she's like, you know, I'm still on this spiritual journey and I've realized we're all one.
Yeah.
You know, I am Joseph Green, but I'm a Japanese woman and you are Joseph Green and you and you and you and you are Joseph Green and you are. And she points at the back, and then I enter through the back. And then I am Joseph Green.
So good.
And then the music comes up. We have that moment, and then we start kissing.
Yeah, it's so surreal. It goes from like, you know, a pretty reasonably straightforward stand-up comedy act to suddenly this really almost like absurdist meta thing within itself. And yeah, I really loved it.
Thanks, brother.
What it reminds me of you taking the photo of, is it Motoko?
Motoko, yeah.
Motoko, and making it your Comedy Fest artwork. It reminds me of, do you know the band Weezer?
No, I don't.
So Weezer's like an old 90s like punk band who still make music today. And in 2010, they released this album called Hurley, which the cover of that album was just a picture of the actor who played the character Hurley in Lost. And the reason they chose it was because the lead singer Rivers took a photo with him and just loved it so much that he made that just this photo of him, the album cover.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that really reminds me of what you did with Motoko.
Yeah.
How did you meet, and what's the name of the woman who does the stand-up after you?
Mayumi.
How did you meet her, and how did these two women come into it?
So Mayumi had done some stand-up beforehand and some cabaret, and I had met her once or twice before, maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But how I got back in touch with her was that once I decided I wanted to use two Japanese women in this show, there's a website called Star Now.
Yes.
And I'd never done this, but if you're sort of doing a production, you can just say, I'm a director, and you're doing a paid production, and then you get sort of a free license to advertise that production. And so you can go, and then within that, you can also use their search engine. So I sort of like just did women, Japan, Melbourne, 50 plus.
Yeah.
And had a list of Japanese women.
Right.
And I wrote all their names out. Then I added all of them on Facebook.
Instead of contacting them on Star Now?
Well, it's a little, maybe an intelligent person would have done that. But it felt like there were other steps, and I thought maybe they weren't going to check their Star Now accounts. Yeah. I thought Facebook might just be a bit more efficient.
And so did you just add them and send them a DM?
Yeah. I was just sliding into all of their DMs. I added so many Japanese women that, Facebook recommends friends.
Yeah.
It started recommending me other Japanese women.
So, just thinks you're in this network of Japanese women in Melbourne.
Which is kind of what I am or was in for a while, and did meet up with quite a few. And at one point had like a little roster of Japanese women that I was thinking of using.
Yeah.
One of them told me a week before that she wasn't fully Japanese. She was half Japanese and couldn't actually speak Japanese. She'd grown up in Malaysia.
Right.
And I really wanted them to speak Japanese.
Yeah.
So,
and both of these women do speak Japanese in the show.
Yes. So, and one cool thing that they did, this isn't really giving away much anyway, but if something happened within the crowd that night while I was performing, say I was talking to someone and then Mayumi wanted to call it back or reference it, she would ask Ayuko in Japanese, where are the guys seated that he was talking to before?
Right.
And she's like, they're in the second row on your left. Oh. And she's like, and so they would speak in Japanese and she would help her.
Right, but to the audience, it just sounds like they're just saying whatever.
Yeah, just having a quick little chat.
Gotcha, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Love that.
Yeah, it was very, very cool.
So much just like secret stuff happening in that show.
Yeah.
You know what's funny, and I've forgotten the name again, it's
Mayumi? Yes.
Before your show, I went to the bathroom and I accidentally went into the women's bathroom. And as I was leaving, I saw Mayumi, who at that point I just thought was a woman at the bar we were at.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, is this the women's bathroom? And she's like, I think so. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then after the show, I went up to her and she's like, oh, I met you in the toilet before. And I was like, yes, that was you. So crazy, man. It was a lot of fun.
It is very fun. And the other night I said before, those two guys were like, we know Dino. Mm-hmm. On that particular night, that was such a gift because whenever Ayuko would stand up and be like, I'm Dino, there would be that moment from the audience like, what the hell's happening? But on that night, because they were like, nah, Dino's not here. We know Dino.
Yeah.
Then she just chimed in straight away and said, no, I am here. It's me. And so everyone laughed and thought, oh, she was just making a joke.
Yeah.
Because she's a Japanese woman. And then because she got such a big laugh and she hasn't done that much performing, she was so energized by it. She sort of, her eyes lit up and she started like bounding towards the stage. Wow. And I could just see her and she just had this energy about her and she's like, take take the kombucha, put on the kimono, and just bossing me around in such a fun way.
And so what do both of those women do with their lives? Like, are they... So you said she's not performed much. Like, does she want to be a performer?
Ayuko, she does do some extra work, which is, I guess, why she's on Star Now.
Yeah.
And some small little jobs like that.
Yeah.
So, and she was so happy to do it. And I was just so happy to have her. And I was a little bit... Beforehand, I was so stressed out. I mean, probably the show you saw was my peak stress because we'd never performed it before.
Yeah.
And we really couldn't perform it before.
Yeah, in front of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you never know how it's going to be received. Is it going to work? Are they going to laugh at all? And also I'm just thinking I'm asking these women to come into the city every night for 2 weeks. And then we ended up putting on extra shows and they just fortunately it went well. But yeah, so I think it could have easily have not gone well, but we got away with it. Yeah.
Do you have any kind of connection with Japan prior to this? Have you been to Japan?
I have been to Japan before. I've spent a couple of weeks there, and there's actually we found out it's not a funny story, but a sort of a very serendipitous thing. There's a town outside of Tokyo called Kamakura.
I've been there.
Have you really?
Yeah. It's where the big Buddha is.
You have?
I've got a photo of it.
You're kidding me.
Can I show you the photo?
Yeah, this is amazing.
You keep
Mike.
talking. I'm listening. I'll just get the photo for you.
That is amazing. Man, you're part of our thing now.
Tell me.
Because I was explaining to them, I had a really special time at Kamakura.
Which is about is it around an hour's train out from Tokyo?
Exactly
and
right.
And it's a seaside little town, yeah?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. 2018 I was there.
That's amazing, Mike.
Yeah. So what?
So I spent time there because I had some friends living in Kamakura.
Okay.
And
what were they doing there?
One was a photographer, and one of them sort of just an artist, traveling the world and based himself there for a bit.
So cool.
And we spent a bit of time there, but both of those women had stories about Kamakura as well. So Ayuko used to work there.
Yep.
And Mayumi used to visit there a lot as well. So we all had this sort of Kamakura and now you're part of the...
Yeah, so I'll put this on the screen for the video. That's a picture of me at Kamakura.
Oh, brilliant.
So the main, I guess, tourist thing there is this massive statue.
That's a great photo.
Yeah, so this was a while ago. And
what brought you there?
So that was my third time going to Japan, and I was just I just wanted to do a few day trips out of Tokyo and spend the day sort of taking the train down to somewhere. So I just looked up what are some nice towns around Tokyo, and Kamakura was the first one. So I went down there and spent, a half day there. It's really lovely in Japan because there's it's such a, it is a small country, I guess, but there's so much different stuff within an hour out of the cities.
Yeah.
It's totally different towns. So yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Their sensibility is so nice, and the respect and reverence they have for everyone and everything is very refreshing.
Yeah. So where were the two women in your show from originally?
Oh, that's a good question. I think Ayuko's from Osaka.
Yep.
And where is Mayumi from? I will be guessing.
Not gonna guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And where did you go in Japan? And do you any highlights or stories to tell? Because I've had some really great times there. I love it.
Oh, what would it? Well, I was based in Tokyo for a bit and Kamakura. And one of the, I don't know if this is struck us as a highlight, my friend Fergal and I, but we were catching the train back from Kamakura to Tokyo one day. And you would know this, that it's very against the etiquette of train travel to be eating or drinking on public transport.
Particularly on on a cross city train like a Shinkansen. It might be a bit different because they're 5-hour trains, but just on a standard city train.
You wouldn't do it.
You
don't just see anyone doing it. But on this particular day, we, for whatever reason, we're very hungry and we just had a hot chocolate.
Yeah.
And I remember we were drinking this hot chocolate, trying to be very discreet about it. And this very beautiful Japanese woman came on with a child, and her baby had a lollipop. And she had such this like amazing radiance about her, and then had the lollipop, and the baby was sort of not interested in the lollipop, and she kind of looked at us a couple of times, and then just started sucking the lollipop herself, and in the most subtle way. It wasn't that's even a sexual suck of the lollipop. But because anything small of like food or drink is amplified in that context, her sucking the lollipop just like blew our minds.
Right.
And the fact that I remember it and made such a strong, it was such an impact that we were like, I spilled the hot chocolate on my pants from Kamakura to Tokyo. And we were sort of like, she was on the train for 3 minutes and just barely touched.
You'll never forget it.
I'll never forget it.
And it's like you having the hot chocolate like gave her permission to do it.
Yeah.
She was like, fuck it, I'm just doing it. And
we were just watching her. She's just taking very tender care of her child who was indifferent to the lollipop. And then she was aware that she had our attention in the way some, beautiful women sometimes are conscious of the fact that the male gaze is on them for a moment.
Yeah.
And so we were sort of like just conscious of her, and then she was conscious of us being conscious of her. And that lollipop, the way she caressed it was unforgettable.
Sure. Okay. It definitely seems unforgettable.
But especially as when you've been in Japan and in Tokyo, when you know that sensibility and etiquette where it's everyone's so, what's the word? Within themselves and the opposite of revealing themselves in any way.
And I think as well, like comparing it to say Melbourne is like, and this is going to sound shit for people in Melbourne, but like Japanese people really respect their country. And
they do. And people they're sharing it with.
Yes. And like, if you look around Japan, there's no litter and there's barely any bins because people don't throw their rubbish on the ground.
Yeah.
They will find a bin and put it there. But like, we noticed we were just carrying empty like coffee cups or whatever for kilometers because we just couldn't find a public bin. But they don't need them there because people don't litter.
Yeah.
They just will hang on to the rubbish until they're home or something.
Yeah, they
like
respect the space.
Yeah, whereas in Melbourne, especially in the CBD, there's just trash everywhere all the time. And it's just like, I think it's just a respect thing with the people. Like,
it really is.
We don't respect our land as much as other countries may.
Yeah, and I mean, it's you could probably identify lots of reasons why that's the case, but even the fact that there's so many people in a condensed space, but and that doesn't happen in other parts of the world, New York or other places where you still have a lot of density of people, but people not respecting it. There's something very uniquely Japanese that they have that.
It's such a beautiful culture, and my dream is to retire and live in Tokyo.
Really?
Yeah.
When did this dream emerge for you, Mike?
I've always loved Japanese culture. Like I'm a huge, I think the term is weeb.
Yes. Yes.
I think I'm one of those. And just I've been there a few times and I've just felt so serene there. Like
nice.
In Melbourne, everyone's always rushing and pushing and stuff like that. In Japan, like people are just a little bit slower. Like people don't jaywalk and things like that. They're just patient and like waiting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I really
even in
like
Tokyo,
that.
you feel that?
Even in Tokyo,
that's
which
wonderful.
In terms of population concentration, there's so many more people in that small space than in Melbourne. But I just felt like it was slower paced despite the amount of people there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you speak Japanese?
I can speak a little bit of Japanese and I can read all of the hiragana and katakana, which are the two main alphabets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you read like a lot of Japanese stuff like Haruki Murakami, these sort of guys?
Well, I've got a couple Murakami books, so I have read a few. There's Norwegian Wood down there.
Oh, lovely.
Which is on my list.
Yeah.
Lots of anime in my childhood and stuff like that, and a bit of manga. So yeah, there's a bit of that.
Great, man.
I love Japanese films. I just have always been obsessed with the culture.
Oh, wow.
Which is
Did you do Japanese at school?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I did it up till year 9, but I've still retained a fair bit since then. Yeah. Well, you would have done Japanese you went to Xavier College, didn't you? So did you not want me to say that?
Just the way you said it.
Xavier College.
Even the college part is like, oh, God. I really hate, it's a fine school, but... Well, I'm going to have to be careful here. I think it's got a reputation for producing a few douchebags.
Hey man, do you know what school I went to?
You went to St. Kevin's.
Well, so how do you think
we're
feel?
We're both guilty.
We've been in the news more than you have in the last 4 years.
Oh yeah, actually you have, haven't you?
Yeah. Couple
but there's some great people to come from the school as well. And
well, Charlie Clausen, who I work with on TOEFOP, he does TOEFOP with Will Anderson. He went to Xavier, which I only found out last year.
And he's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
Great guy. So there's a few of us. I mean,
you're great.
I'm just putting
Charlie's
myself
great.
in the good category. But I actually went so long in my life not wanting to associate myself with the school.
Yeah, interesting.
And
well, sorry, man. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I can cut all this.
That's fine. But it's like I was in New York in an acting class once, and there was this beautiful like Danish woman in the actress.
Sure.
And she came up to me and was like, "Oh, where in Australia are you from?" I said, I'm from Melbourne. And she said, "Oh, my husband's from Melbourne." I said, "Oh, what part of Melbourne?" And she said, "Oh, he's from Kew." I'm like, "I went to school in Kew." She's like, "So did he. Did you go to Xavier?" And I'm like, "Yes." And she's like, "Oh, he always talks about it. He always talks about how such a great school it is." I'm like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah, he never stops talking about it." I'm like, "So what does your husband do?" She's like, "Oh, he's a banker. We like live downtown just off Wall Street."
Wow.
So I'm like, this dude is like some investment banker in New York. He's got this like beautiful European wife, and all he's talking to her is about like, "Oh, baby, you should have seen my high school. We had 5 ovals."
Bloody check out the Stevenson Centre. The Stevenson Centre is like the recreation centre.
How do you know that?
Because I grew up in Kew. I used to like Xavier. All my friends went to Xavier from primary school.
That is such an obscure reference.
Yeah, I know.
You know they had to rename that.
I do. Let's not go into that. But like, it's funny because I obviously went to St. Kevin's. People know that. Xavier was like, at the time I was at St. Kevin's, it was one of the cheaper private schools. Like Xavier has always been one of the most expensive. That's why we didn't go there. But St. Kevin's at the time was quite one of the cheaper ones, considering the prices. But now it's right up there as well.
I'm sure St. Kevin's it's pretty expensive.
Oh, it is. But
you were on a scholarship as well.
I was on a scholarship, but it's more expensive now than it was when we went.
Well, I'm sure that's the case for everything, huh?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, guys. All right, Joseph, if you want to fuck me, if you want to fuck my opinions.
Just because I'm like, this is, you're so, like, just in case you're going to put Xavier and St. Kevin's in equal douchebag status, let's just be clear. Xavier's always been a hoity-toity fucking factory of assholes.
No, I'm pretty sure Tom Gleisner, who is from Working Dog, he's the host of Have You Been Paying Attention. I'm pretty sure he went to Xavier College as well.
I love it how you're trying to find like a few good people.
Yeah, there's a couple of them.
No, and there are people from the school that I love dearly as well.
Yeah,
but there are things that I'm
Name
like.
one. No, I'm joking.
Oh, Joseph Valente.
He's same first name as you. Sounds pretty made up. What was the surname? Delente. What the hell? That is so made up. Yeah, I know a guy from Xavier, Michael Pentari. Yep, he's cool. Love him. No, sorry, man. I've put you on the spot a bit with this.
That was not even a made-up name.
What, Michael Delente? No, Joseph Delente.
But Valente. I'm just doing it on literally the last person who came to one of my shows.
Actually, what year did you graduate?
Oh, ages ago.
Do you want to say?
I can say 03.
Okay, interesting, because one of my friends went to Xavier College and is probably around your age.
Yeah, what's his name?
His name's Michael Quirk.
Quirk?
He is now a policeman, but he was the drummer in a band called City Calm Down, which is a really cool Australian band.
Oh, Michael Quirk. I was thinking of Michael Quick.
Do you know Michael Quirk?
Nah. It's close.
So who's Michael Quick?
He was a guy on my year level.
Okay.
He was the first person to show me pornography.
And tell us about that. That.
It was back in the CD-ROM days.
Was this in the Stevenson Centre?
No. It was like probably in maths class.
Yeah.
And it was like Debbie Does Dallas.
Yes.
On CD-ROM. And it was like going, people was just like, download it, pass it on.
Wow.
And Quick was sitting next to me. And he's like, take this. I was like, what's this? He's like, it's Debbie Does Dallas. I was like, what is that? He's like, just download it. You'll thank me later.
What a scoop.
Did
you thank him?
I guess I did. If I didn't, thank you now.
To Michael Quick.
Michael Quick.
Not Michael Quick.
Belated gratitude for Michael Quick.
Yeah, wow.
Debbie Does Dallas. And then who's the person who's starting that film was Jenna Jameson.
Yeah, I know your story with Jenna Jameson.
Do you?
Yeah, because we should talk about this. The first time I met you.
Oh God.
Well, I met you like probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And you came on Luke and Lewis's radio show, and I'm pretty sure the story you told was the Jenna Jameson story. Yeah, the story about how you met someone in America who was texting Jenna Jameson, and you were trying to get with her.
Now that you're telling it back to me, I feel awful.
Why?
Just because it's like, I don't know. It's like, oh, this guy went to Xavier College.
No.
He tried to hook up with Jenna Jameson.
Oh, I mean...
No, I didn't even really... I wasn't trying to hook up with her, but...
You wanted to meet her.
You're right. I was at a restaurant and there was a woman sitting next to me. It was like one of these communal tables.
Yeah.
Who was texting her, like very... holding her phone up so everyone could see it.
Yeah.
And I sort of just glanced over and saw she was texting Jenna Jameson. It said Jenna Jameson. And I'm just a very open guy. So I was like, are you texting, sorry to interrupt, madam, but are you texting me, Jenna Jameson? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, really? You know Jenna Jameson? She's like, yeah. I'm like, why are you texting her? And she said, oh, she's thinking of coming here right now. I'm like, whoa. And I was kind of like on a date on that night. One of these dates where I didn't know it was a date.
Oh.
Like I thought I was just catching up as friends with this girl.
Okay.
But I think for her, she thought it was a date. And and I'm getting excited about Jenna Jameson coming to join us because she said, oh, Jenna's going to come. And then she messaged the girl saying, there's this Aussie bloke, he really wants to meet you. And she's like, I love Aussies.
Yeah. But I think it's totally fair that, like, if you were sitting next to someone who was texting, like, I don't know, Matt Damon, you'd be like, oh, are you texting Matt Damon?
Exactly.
Like, it's just the star factor.
Yeah. You're just like... What are the chances? You just asked that.
What are the chances?
I can't believe I said that. It seems so lame.
No, but it's like, I think that's a reasonable thing to do. You want to meet someone famous. That's pretty cool.
You know, on that thing, what are the chances? My mum came on the second or third night. And before she said like anything about the show, like, oh, it was nice, sweetheart, or well done, or anything like that, the first thing she said, sweetheart, I've got an idea that's just going to take the show to another level.
Yeah.
I said, oh, what's that? And she said, oh, at the end of every joke, just pause and then just say to the audience, what are the chances?
Which, like, I'm sorry, Mrs. Green, would be a horrible idea, right?
Exactly. Thank you, Mike. I said, no, it's not necessary.
What are the chances? Today I bloody went to the shops. My card got declined. What are the chances?
And I said, I'm not doing that. And she said, but I said, why would I do that? She said, sweetheart, it's the title of the show. I said, I know that. I made the title. And she said, okay, if you don't want the extra laughs, I guess you don't want the extra laughs.
It's just like how Will Anderson at the end of all his jokes goes, Will Eagle. Like, just a reminder.
That would be great. I would love to see Will do that.
I've got a, speaking of that date, the non-date you were on with Jenna Jameson, Jenna never came.
She never came. Well, she might have come, but the girl wanted to leave. And I saw she was a bit upset, and I thought I still want to be nice to this woman I'm with. So
I had this. This is back to Japan. I hope it's okay if I.
Let's go back to Japan.
Back to Japan. 10-hour flight. We're here. The local time is this. Anyway, cool. Sorry. I was hanging out with this girl in Japan who's still a good friend of mine and lives in Melbourne now, but she lived in Byron at the time, and we met and like went out for drinks and stuff and went out clubbing and stuff, and it was awesome. And the next morning I had a train booked to go down to Hiroshima, and we woke up and she was like, oh my God. And she was like flying out of Japan to Byron the next day. And she's like, I think I've left my bag with my passport and like everything at the club we were at last night. And I was like, oh my God, like I have to get on this train. And then we were both like, I think we were just both so drunk. We have no idea what the club we were at last night is. And then what happened was I was on the train basically like trying to piece together the night through like videos and photos that had been taken.
A detective routine.
We basically had to sleuth it to find what the bar was that we went to, right? And she went to one bar and realized that the guy who worked at that bar had taken us to that club after he closed the bar. So she found that bar through the photos of him and showing it to people like, do you know this guy? He's my only ticket to finding my passport.
Oh my God.
She then like found that guy. He said, oh yeah, I took you to this club. He walked her to that club and found the bag, luckily, and was able to fly out. But like,
that's incredible.
It was in my opinion, it was one of the biggest successes of social media. Like,
absolutely,
just piecing this all together. Me on a train being like, here is all the information I have on record.
What time did she fly out?
She was flying the day after that.
Oh, the day after. So she had 24 hours, but hustling hard.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's one of my favorite stories. We're coming to the end, but
sure.
I have a routine question that I ask everyone. So, and this, I say we're coming to the end. It generally takes like 10 minutes for this question. Okay. It's a big one. So what is one movie, book, album, and if you're so inclined, video game that you think that everyone should watch, read, listen to, and play in their lifetime?
Okay.
Take your time, but preferably not silence because that's bad.
Yeah, so album is Kind of Blue by Miles Davis.
Okay.
It's a classic. In jazz it's pretty iconic and nothing sort of out of the, it's not an obscure choice, but it's, just as a whole composition, I really love it.
And does Miles Davis does he sing or is it all instrumental?
It's all instrumental.
Cool.
But it's just, I don't know, there's just something very nourishing and fortifying about that album, especially when you listen to it as a whole. And people don't really listen to many albums as a whole anymore, I feel.
And when did you discover that album? Like, how long has it been a part of your life?
I don't know. My auntie is really into Miles Davis, but I think it's a good question. I think maybe 7 years ago when I was living in New York or coming back to Melbourne and wanting to sort of retain the sensibility. And it has a bit of that like grit and grime and like dirty elegance that I associate with different places there.
Cool.
So that's one album.
And do you know what year that's from or around?
I reckon 1964.
64, okay.
It could, within 5 years of that.
Yeah, cool.
And book, what book? Maybe Catcher in the Rye.
Oh, yeah. Holden Caulfield?
Yes.
Is that it?
Yeah, you got it straight away, man.
There's a Green Day song called Who Wrote Holden Caulfield?
I love that
which
title.
is a reference to, I guess, Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Which I read at school. And you probably relate to it. It's just like you're at some like fancy school and you're just hating the sort of everyone else there, which is kind of how I felt a little bit there. But it tapped into that mentality. It's a good outsider's book, I guess. Book, album,
movie, and then if inclined, video game.
Video game.
Did you grow up playing games?
I did. Like I played a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Cool.
I sort of always envied like the Nintendo guys and girls because
you had a Sega Genesis or something.
I had the original Sega.
Okay.
And all my friends had Nintendo and they had Mario and stuff, and I really envied that. And I was like, Mom, can we get one? She's like, no, but you should be happy with your Sega. And then only till I grew up did I appreciate my own origin story of being a Sonic the Hedgehog boy.
Yeah.
And realize, that's got its own, quality to it as well.
Did you see the Sonic the Hedgehog live action movie that came out a few years ago?
I haven't. Is it great?
Oh, it's fun. You should watch it.
I should.
I think you'd get a lot out of it.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I will. On that recommendation.
Yeah.
But there was a Pokemon game, I think, on Xbox or Nintendo.
It definitely wouldn't have been Xbox because they're only on Nintendo.
Okay, then it's definitely Nintendo. It must have been the 64.
Yeah.
But I often talk about this game. It was like a number of games within it, but there was one game that I sort of talked to other comics about as far as a metaphor for just like navigating your life as a creative person, which is one of the games is like you're this sort of animal and there are these...
Probably a Pokemon.
A Pokemon, yeah. And there are rocks catapulted towards you.
I know exactly what game you're talking about.
And you have to protect yourself by hardening your
Using
shell.
harden, yeah.
And when you harden your shell, you lose some energy. If you don't harden your shell and get squished by the rock, you lose a lot more energy.
Yeah. So it's about timing the harden. The game is called Metapod Harden. It's from Pokemon Stadium 1, the game corner. And you can be either a Kakuna or a Metapod. It's randomly assigned to you. And you press A to harden. And you're right. As long as you're pressing A, your health is depleting. But if the rock hits you, bam, huge chunk of health. And it's whoever is last
This
one
guy,
standing.
I love you, Mike.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I'd love to play it with you sometime. I was the master of it.
Oh, really? Well, I
yeah.
think that game, for me, is so much about being an artist and a comedian.
Right.
Because I feel like so much of what you do, what we're doing, what you're doing now, you need to be open and you need to be soft and available. But there are certain times where you need to like have your boundaries up and your shell up and protect yourself.
Yeah.
And I think, especially, in stand-up, well, that's what I know the best, is that it can be tough, like just grinding it out. And sometimes you just got to be careful with your energy and looking after yourself, but you can't let that encroach upon you being open. But you have to be selective when you do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that game for me sort of is a metaphor for myself of how to navigate the world.
There's another mini game in Pokemon Stadium, which is called Sushi Go Round, where you play as the Pokemon Lickitung and you have to get as much sushi as possible.
Yes, that's a great game.
That's my life. I just want...
I love you, brother.
I want as much sushi as possible. But no, that is a great analogy. Before we do movie, can I ask...
Yes.
And we might go a little... Like, you still got
I've
5,
got
10 minutes?
Yeah, of course.
What is your journey as a creative, I guess? Like, do you struggle with that ever? Like, because sometimes I struggle balancing creativity with earning a living to survive and things like that.
Of course.
I love all my jobs.
Yeah.
So it's not really an issue, but there's definitely always that creator's struggle, I guess.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Oof. I mean, that's such a big topic.
Well, I asked it.
Yes.
You answer it.
Well, how do I feel about it?
Yeah. Or how do you see that in your journey?
So my journey is like a big zigzag journey. I mean, one of the things in the show that I kind of touched upon in that first show you saw, but sort of found the funny moments better, I think, as the show progressed, which was just about like the fact that I'd been doing arts law for like 5 years and was at the end of right near the end of the degree, and then thought, I just want to do something else, and then trying to make that work, and then feeling like you sort of oscillate between feeling, I'm making some progress, and then thinking, I'm just failing miserably here, and then actually I'm making some progress, and so part of like the story you tell yourself within that is, and it's so soppy, but just being gentler to yourself within that journey, and part of it is that metaphor of the Pokemon game, and then I think just doing what you can, using what you have, starting where you are, just being a lot more simple about how you create, and I guess your expectations for like what you're creating. Like even in this show just gone, that whole thing with the Japanese woman, I was very uncertain whether it would be successful or funny or it would resonate with anyone or make an impact or something people would want to see. And you just, I guess, pursue your own joy and hope that some people connect with it.
Can I ask, and I think I know the answer to that, but I could know the answer to this, but I could be wrong. When you finished in 2003 at the school that you went to,
yes,
you mentioned you went into arts law.
Yes.
Did you feel at that point in 2003 that you could did you want to, or did you feel like you could be a comedian or a creative?
So I didn't go straight into arts law.
Okay.
I started playing football in the VFL when I left school.
Man of every talent here.
Not really.
Arts law, footy player.
No, it's actually
comedian. Model. Jesus.
I had a similar journey to one of your old schoolmates, Vance Joy.
Yeah. Yep.
So we both played.
Did you know Vance?
I didn't know him. I think I was a few years ahead of him. But
yeah, I think he was 2007.
Yeah, because we both played at Coburg in the VFL.
Gotcha.
And then we both did arts law at Monash. And do you know Oliver Coleman by any chance?
I don't.
Also a St. Kevin's boy.
Sure.
But also a comedian now.
Oh.
And he was on the show after me at Storyville.
Okay.
And he told me that at Monash, when they were both at Monash, Vance had come up to him. I know his name's not Vance.
His name's James Keogh. Yeah.
He'd come up to Ollie and it was like at the...
And he said, hey man, there's this movie I think you'd like. This guy decides to quit his job and head to New York City. And then Oliver goes, you should turn that into a song.
You're actually not far off.
Oh no.
He was showing him some lyrics of music he was trying to write. And Ollie was like a musician as well.
Okay.
And it was like, what do you think? I'd love to jam with you. And to his face, he's like, yeah, sure. But then to his other mates, he's like, dude, this guy sucks.
About Vance.
Yeah.
Oh, should I? Well, if Vance ever hears this, not coming from me, I love Vance Joy, just so people
Oliver
know.
actually loves him as well.
Well, now he does.
He loves him as well. But it's such a funny story, Ollie telling it. And maybe I shouldn't even be telling it, but it's a beautiful story. And both of them are great artists in their own way.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? Yeah, it wasn't in my head that I wanted to be a comedian at that point in 2003. I'd always loved stand-up, and I did a few 21st speeches in that year, and that's when I thought like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
And started thinking of the idea of doing it.
Cool. That's funny because like I've always been really anxious, but I used to like come alive when I had to do speeches for friends' birthdays.
I bet you would.
Yeah, and like I remember like just doing this speech for my friend Lars's 16th birthday, and like everyone was like laughing heaps. Not in a, I'm not trying to brag, but like I just remember I spent so much time
you were killing
trying to make it funny, and everyone was laughing. I'm like, oh god, well that's something I can do. Like,
that's great.
But yeah, movie you think people might like? To use the words of Vance Joy.
What movie is in my consciousness? I'm sort of overwhelmed with...
There's so many movies.
Sort of oscillating between saying something cliche or... all I can think of right now is Forrest Gump. Which, if you haven't seen it, you should definitely see it.
I haven't seen it. I know. I've heard it's the best thing ever. I've never.
You're kidding me.
There are so many blind spots in like big movies I've never seen.
That maybe was why I was thinking it.
What? You got a reading?
I got a reading from you, Mike. I was like, what hasn't he seen that he could really learn from? Forrest Gump for you.
Yeah, and tell me about it.
I mean, it's just, a brilliant performance, but it's so like poetic in as far as like the journey of a myriad of things we do in our lives. I mean, taken to a very extreme case in the case of, Forrest, played by Tom Hanks. But it's just a very joyful, touching film.
Nice.
And I definitely must see it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, Joseph Green from Xavier College, who loves Pokemon Stadium, Forrest Gump, and Miles Davis. Thank you for joining me here on Mike Talks today.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure, brother. Cheers.
See you guys. Talk on.
Thank you.
I guess I just say talk on at the end now.
Talk on. Thank you.
This podcast was a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to check out all our other content, stay up to date at radio.mike on Instagram, and get in touch, radiomikepod@gmail.com.